Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to season 3 of the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Kayla Smith, CEO of the Hormone Puzzle Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and pregnancy, an integrative, holistic nutritionist, doctor of natural medicine and training, creator of the Hormone Puzzle Method, an infertility warrior, 2-time boy mom, and women's health expert. This podcast is for women struggling with infertility, painful periods, terrible PMS, or really just any symptoms of hormone imbalance that they are ready to eliminate for good. Tune in weekly as we interview amazing experts in the field of women's health, breaking down those hormone walls, nerding out on nutrition, and having way too much fun. Whether you're beginning your journey or you've been struggling for years, we're going to finally help you put those pieces of your hormone puzzle back together so that you can get pregnant and eliminate those pesky symptoms for good. Not to mention, stay pregnant, have a healthy super baby, and easy postpartum. Are you ready? This season is packed with even more expert guests, sharing groundbreaking knowledge, giving you that jolt of energy that you so desperately need, sending you lots of virtual hugs, and inspiring you to take your fertility into your own hands and make that baby. Thank you all so much for tuning in and being amazing listeners. So now let's get started on your road to transformation. On today's show, we're talking to Laura Dragon, a registered dietitian specializing in women's health, specifically PCOS, fertility, and thyroid conditions. She has her own personal experience with hormone imbalance and a thyroid condition, which sparked her interest in the world of hormones. She also worked in a primary care office where she saw countless other women dealing with similar issues who were frustrated with the lack of nutrition advice they were given. Laura has since made it her mission to help other women dealing with hormonal imbalances by providing them with the most comprehensive nutrition care possible without restrictive diets. Her goal is to arm women with the tools and information they need to nourish their bodies, have more energy, regulate their cycles, and optimize fertility. Yes, please. On today's show, we're talking about thyroid, PCOS, and hormones. So many people are struggling with hormone and thyroid issues today, and we're going to dive into why and what you can do starting today to optimize your thyroid and fertility, all while living symptom-free. Now, let's welcome Laura to the show. Hey, Laura, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so I would love to hear just a little more about you, kind of what inspired you to focus in on thyroid and PCOS and become a dietitian?
Yeah, of course. So, well, first of all, some dietitians, they become dietitians because they've always been really into like health and wellness. And that actually wasn't really the case for me. I didn't always eat super healthy growing up or anything, but I always just like really loved food. And I also enjoyed science. So when I went to college and I took a nutrition class, it was kind of like this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, it's amazing how food impacts the body in so many ways. And that really like jump-started my love for nutrition. So that I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to become a dietitian, but hormones didn't really come into the picture until later. But first I'll rewind really quick. When I was like 12 or 13 years old, I was put on the pill because I had terrible periods. And even as a kid, which to be honest, I really was a kid, like going on the pill, I was like, this just kind of seems odd that like I'm going on this medication and we're not figuring out like why I'm having these terrible periods. But I still just took it. I took the pill for about 15 years before I actually decided that I wanted to dig a little deeper and figure out like what was going on. And yeah, so after about 15 years, I decided, okay, let's go off the pill and see what's going on. And I just wanted to like tune more into like my cycle too, and just, feel more in tune with my natural hormones. And then once I went off the pill, at least for me, it was like my symptoms came back with vengeance. I had terrible periods. I had bad cystic acne that I never had before. I had hair loss. I was just tired all the time. So it took some time, and a lot of testing, but I found out that I had really high estrogen levels. I had a thyroid condition. I had Hashimoto's. So that really like sparked the journey for me. But over time, I was able to learn how to support my body naturally. I don't have terrible periods anymore. My thyroid is under control. I have good energy levels. My hair grew back. So I do have the occasional breakout every once in a while, but overall just a lot happier and more myself, not on the pills. So just when I was going through that whole process, just tuning into my natural cycle, I found that a lot of people were coming to me with, similar questions like, about fertility, about thyroid, about PCOS. So even though I don't have PCOS, just when you're getting into hormones, it's definitely something that is talked about a lot. So I just realized, wow, this is definitely an area that a lot of women need support in. So that was just when I decided to open my private practice.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's so crazy that so many of us were put on the pill for that long. I was as well. For 15 years, I was on the pill and never once was like, wait a minute, this is doing something weird to my body. I just trusted my doctor. So I'm so glad we're talking about this. And it's such an important topic, especially for, all ages, but definitely younger girls. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, of course.
And I would love to dive in a little bit more with thyroid and hyperthyroidism. You said you were diagnosed with that Hashimoto's, and I find that so often, so many of my clients are coming to me with these diagnoses. And why do you think that could be? Why do you think it's so prevalent now more than ever?
Yeah, so that's definitely a good question, and one that I don't think we have like a definitive answer on, but I think a big contributor to thyroid dysfunction in general is just that there's a huge increase in endocrine disrupting chemicals in our environment, or hormone disruptors that our ancestors never really were exposed to before. So just things like a lot of plastics or BPA, artificial fragrances, flame retardants, just other pollutants in our environment that are interfering with our hormones and our endocrine system. And just causing a lot of these hormonal conditions.
Gotcha. And I heard a crazy statistic recently that said we're exposed to more chemicals in 1 month than our grandparents were their entire lives, which is so crazy to me. I'm like, no wonder there's all these hormonal issues. It's just insane.
It is crazy. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that isn't really talked about a lot, unfortunately, or we're like, maybe, oh yeah, like I have some chemicals, but there's not much that we can do about it. But really there is a lot that we can do just to at least reduce the exposure and the amount that we're, having in our daily lives and in our products all the time.
For sure. And I find that a lot too. I'm sure you do as well, where I'll tell people about this and, I'll be coaching them through it. And they're like, oh, I don't have a lot of chemicals in my environment. And then we start diving into it. And I'm like, okay, let's look at your beauty products, your cleaning products, your this, your that. And they're like, whoa, okay, I do have a lot of chemicals in my environment. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely a lot of other common threads that I see with thyroid conditions too, though. So that's definitely not the only thing. Like a lot of root causes that I tend to see with thyroid conditions are lots of like gut issues or gut imbalances, stress in general. The thyroid gland is very much susceptible to any type of stress. So it's kind of a diva. So any amount of stress can cause it to flare. Like things like mold or liver dysfunction, hormonal imbalances, nutrient deficiencies. I really could go on, but definitely a common thread is, high stress levels, however that may look.
For sure. And how would we know that we're having thyroid issues? I mean, is this something where we have to get tested for it? Or is it like we're seeing these symptoms and we can assume that it's thyroid related? And so then we should just start living holistically like we're talking anyways?
Yeah, so I do think that it's always important to get a full thyroid panel done. But there's definitely a lot of hallmark symptoms with thyroid conditions. So typically things that may pop up would be things like feeling cold all the time or having cold hands and feet, that hair loss that I talked about, particularly hair loss on like the outer third of the eyebrow. That is very specific to thyroid, I've found. Other things like weight gain or inability to lose weight. So those are just a few different symptoms associated with thyroid. So if you're having like a lot of seemingly thyroid related symptoms, then I definitely would recommend getting your thyroid checked out. And getting a full thyroid panel is always the main thing that I talk about with people, because when you go to the doctor, they're not usually going to order a full thyroid panel. It may just be one thyroid related lab, which is TSH. And that does not even begin to tell us the whole picture of what's going on with your thyroid. And usually they won't do anything until that lab is like way, way out of range of what I would consider normal. So I think that's always just important to educate people that we do need to get regular lab testing done, but especially if you're experiencing some symptoms.
For sure, for sure. And I'm a big fan too. I do a full thyroid panel. Don't just do your TSH, because it's like you said, it's just a piece, a very small piece of the overall picture and puzzle. So yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about PCOS, another hormonally related condition, metabolic condition. So talk to us a little bit about that. Why do you think PCOS as well is being so prevalent lately?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that PCOS root causes can be really similar to hypothyroidism as well. And something I didn't mention too, particularly about Hashimoto's and PCOS, is that they both tend to run in the same circle. So people who have PCOS tend to be like 3 to 4 times more likely to have a thyroid condition, especially Hashimoto's. So I think that's definitely important to point out that if you have been diagnosed with PCOS, that should be one reason to get your thyroid checked too. But they both have genetic components to them too. So, but then there's also just environmental factors that exacerbate symptoms. So I do think, just going back to the environmental contaminants and toxins, like that definitely is something that I think can be a big factor in why we're seeing so much more PCOS. But I think in general too, we're also just testing more for it than we ever used to too. So which is a good thing. I think that we just were never even like really doing the right test. There wasn't even a proper diagnosis for it until relatively recently. So it's very possible that more people had PCOS that we just didn't realize, but now we have the right tests, we know what to look for. It's still definitely underdiagnosed, but definitely more people are being aware of PCOS at least.
For sure. And can you talk a little bit about the testing? We talked about testing for your thyroid, but what about for PCOS? How do we get that diagnosis?
Yeah, so there's 3 main criteria that you need in order to receive a PCOS diagnosis. So the first one is anovulatory or irregular menstrual cycles. So we don't really need a test for that, but just, if your cycles are consistently longer than 35 days long, then that would be considered an irregular cycle. But then you do want to get your androgens tested or your male sex hormones. So things like testosterone or DHEAS. One or both of those tend to be elevated with PCOS. And that's something that can trigger symptoms like facial hair growth or hair loss, acne, things like that. And then the third one is polycystic ovaries. So getting a transvaginal ultrasound to take a look at the ovaries to see if they're actually, one misconception with PCOS is that they're actually not cysts at all. So just because you have cysts doesn't necessarily mean you have PCOS. They're actually immature follicles that or eggs that haven't been released. So they just tend to build up in the ovary, and you'll see something called like the string of pearls. And that is more of a picture of a PCOS ovary versus an ovary that maybe has like 1 or 2 cysts on it. So just making that distinction.
Gotcha. So what about nutrition? So what should we really be focused on with nutrition related? And we'll get into some of the specifics in our next half, but just overall, is there nutrition deficiencies that you see with clients and kind of relate to these conditions?
Yeah. So, I mean, with both PCOS and hypothyroidism, I would say one of the big things just overall with nutrition is blood sugar imbalances. So insulin resistance is very common with PCOS, especially about 75% of people with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance, but it's also common with hypothyroidism too. And the thing with insulin resistance is that it tends to go under the radar or just unnoticed if we're not paying close attention or if we're not getting the right tests done too. But that is something, if we're having these like blood sugar imbalances throughout the day where we're having high blood sugars and then low blood sugars, that's something that can definitely stress the body out and make it not feel safe. So just in terms of like nutrition, what we can do though is balancing our plate by prioritizing protein, eating enough healthy fats, fiber on our plate, eating consistently throughout the day too, and not, letting ourselves go too long without eating where, we get that blood sugar low and feel really hangry and maybe, shaky or brain fog and all of that stuff. So just being consistent, balancing our meals, that's one of the biggest things that we can do for our hormones and PCOS and thyroid health.
For sure. I love it. Well, we're going to take a short break. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors. We're going to come back and talk practical tips. Like what should we be eating? What should we not be eating? And what lifestyle factors should we really pay attention to? So we'll do that and more when we come back. Hey y'all, it's Coach Kayla here. I hope you are loving this episode as much as I am. We will be back in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Hormone P.U.Z.Z.L.E Society, a women's health hub for fertility, hormones, and the business of coaching. Whether you're struggling to get pregnant with pesky hormone symptoms, or you're working to build a career in the fertility and women's health space, we have you covered. Visit our website at www.coachkayla.com to learn more on how we can help you. Text the keyword fertility to 615-257-8855 for your free fertility meal plan. Hey, Laura, welcome back.
Hey.
So let's dive into practical tips. Tell me what are your top 5 things for starting to optimize our fertility and balance out our hormones, especially for thyroid and PCOS.
Yeah. So just going back to blood sugar balance, I would say that that's probably number 1. Just balancing our meals with protein, fat, and fiber is super important for our hormones and fertility. Next, I would say is eating enough food for your body. And I find this to be another really common thing that I see with a lot of my clients because with both PCOS and hypothyroidism, one of the symptoms tends to be weight gain or inability to lose weight. So the just natural tendency is to eat less. But when we're eating less and less and less, it's actually not giving our body enough nutrients and food that we need to really fuel our thyroid and fuel our hormones. So that would be number 2, definitely just making sure we're eating enough and we're not, feeling hungry all the time and we're feeling satisfied after meals. That's super important. Another one, manage stress like it's your job. We talked about how the thyroid is a diva to stress and it's very sensitive. And so if you are not managing your stress and you are, life is stressful. So it's impossible to go through life without experiencing stress. but it's all about how we can manage it. So are we doing things on a daily basis that are helping just lower our stress levels? Like, are we doing things that make us feel good regularly, or are we just constantly burning ourselves out all the time? So something just that everyone should take a look at in their lives. Another one is getting good quality sleep. And I think that this goes hand in hand with the stress, but if we're not sleeping well, then that is going to affect everything else. So if we're not getting good quality sleep, then that's going to stress us out. That can actually increase our hunger hormones. So then that may affect our blood sugar balance. So it really just is kind of like a domino effect if we're not sleeping well. So doing whatever we can to make sure that we are winding down for the day and sleeping in a calm and good sleep environment so that we can get those 8 hours that we need. And then next would be cleaning up your products. So again, just going back to the toxins and endocrine disruptors that are in our environment, just taking a look at some of the ingredients of what is in our beauty products or body products. I usually tell people to just start by prioritizing things that are going in or on our bodies first and foremost. So like some of the big things I say would be like plastics. So if we are, drinking out of plastic water bottles, or if we're heating up food in plastic Tupperware, then that could be leaching microplastics into our food, and then we're ingesting that. So that would be one of the, low-hanging fruit, like try to take that out and replace it with glass, ceramic, stainless steel, something like that. And then another thing could be just like swapping out nonstick pans. So just avoiding the Teflon chemicals that again could be getting into our food. So those are just like a couple of tips. I think I definitely went over 5, but just some of the things that you can look at. And you don't have to do everything all at once. Just pick whatever of these things you feel like you need to work on most in your life and just focus on one of those things and really hone in on it rather than trying to do everything all at once.
For sure. For sure. I always say it's progress, not perfection. So pick one thing and then up level and do the next thing and so on until you have all these new habits. So I love that. Exactly. Yeah. And so talk to us about any food that we really need to stay away from. Like, is there anything that's like, that is detrimental to the thyroid or to the hormones in general?
Yeah, so it's tricky because it's different for everyone. I'd say with Hashimoto's, the only food that has research really to back up that if your antibodies, your thyroid antibodies are high, removing gluten may be beneficial for lowering those antibodies. But otherwise, everyone is different. Like some people do better without dairy, some people do better without soy or millet or corn in some cases. But it's hard to say just like a blanket statement, like everyone with a thyroid condition should avoid like this food. And with PCOS, there really isn't any research to show that you need to avoid any specific foods. So it's highly, highly individual. Like we're all unique people and we need to just figure out what works best for us. So I think that's where like working with someone too can be really helpful too, just to kind of navigate through that, because it can be a very just daunting task and feeling like you're removing a ton of different foods when you may not need to. And my philosophy is always, let's focus on what we can add to the diet versus what we need to remove from the diet, because that's so much less stressful. And if we can include as many foods as we possibly can, then we're just going to be happier and we're going to be healthier overall.
For sure. And I love that too. I always focus on what we get to eat, not what we don't get to eat, because the brain hears, I can't, I don't. And then you want that. So it's like, let's focus on eating a bunch of good food. And then there's no room for the bad stuff, quote unquote, bad stuff. Yeah. Right. And then too, I know there's a lot of different information around this, but how do you feel with iodine in the thyroid? Should we be watching our iodine consumption in food, or does that not really matter? Is it individualized? Like, can you speak to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, iodine is very important for the thyroid because our thyroid hormones, like the backbone is literally iodine. That's what they're made of. So we, can't have a functioning thyroid without adequate iodine. And I would say inadequate iodine is actually the number one cause of hypothyroidism, like worldwide. It's not as common in like the US or in, major developed countries, but it's still something that's out there and still something that I do see people have iodine deficiencies. So I think, yes, including food sources that have iodine in them. This could be like seaweed or kelp or just mostly seafoods, like that can include lots of iodine, natural iodine sources. But otherwise, getting your iodine tested is really important too. So really like the gold standard for testing your iodine is actually a urine test. So doing a 24-hour urine collection for your iodine. So what you do is you basically take an iodine supplement, and then you collect your urine for 24 hours, and then you test to see how much of that iodine came out. And that's just really the best way to determine, like, does this person have an iodine deficiency or not? And then from there, you can individualize if someone does need to supplement more iodine or not with the thyroid.
Gotcha. And I always like to give a caveat to don't ever add a supplement or take one away without checking with your doctor, healthcare practitioner, especially iodine, because you can do too much or too little and it can throw things off. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thyroid, again, like I said, it's made of iodine, or thyroid hormones. So if we have too much of it, then we can actually go from potentially being in a hypothyroid state to being in a hyperthyroid state where, we're having the opposite symptoms, and we don't want to have those fluctuations either. So definitely want to be careful about iodine.
Exactly. I love it. Well, tell us where we can learn more about you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is @hormone nutrition. My website is laurarosenutrition.com. And yeah, you can just find my content on there, send me a DM, say hi. And yeah, I'd love to chat more.
I love it. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. So it'll be really easy to find you and everybody can learn more. I love it. So as we close, do you have any final thoughts, any words of encouragement or wisdom you want to leave us with?
Yeah, of course. So I would just say, don't do everything all at once. I know we already mentioned this, but I know from personal experience, whenever you're going through a health journey, you can consume so much information and it can just feel so overwhelming. And you're listening to a lot of different podcasts, you're looking at a lot of different posts on Instagram, and you don't know what to listen to and what information is accurate. So just focus on one thing at a time and focus on what makes you feel good. And then once you master that, move on to the next thing. So, and then also don't be afraid to reach out if you need help, because a lot of us do need some help in that area.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much. So fun to talk to you and to get to know you. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, ladies, for listening to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Until next time, bye. Hey, hang on just 1 second before you go. I want to make sure that you are aware of all of the amazing free resources that I have for you on my website at coachkayla.com. From a fertility meal plan, a cycle syncing quick start guide, a holistic healing cookbook, as well as master classes, blog posts by me and some amazing experts in the fields of fertility, hormones, and nutrition. So many wonderful resources that will help you on your journey. And I wish there had been something like this when I was going through my 2 years of infertility, but there just wasn't. And so that's why I decided to create all of this for you. So make sure that you go and check it out and you take advantage of this plethora of support that I have provided for you. And spoiler alert, these were some of the same tricks and the same foods that I used to get myself pregnant, not once, but twice, even after my doctors said that I couldn't. So I know that these things work. So make sure you take advantage of that. And I cannot wait for you to be my next success story. So thanks, love. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in today to the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Check out the show notes for today's episode at CoachKayla.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next week.